Do you hate those pesky decks that just go super wide and they make a bunch of tokens and you just don't want to deal with them anymore and you just want to go pew, 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 pew and just delete everything off their board? Well, I think Phlage Control is going to be the deck for you. Now, there's a lot of Phlage decks going around. Phlage being Titan of Fire's Fury. When you cast it or when it attacks, sorry, when it enters the battlefield or it attacks, you deal 3 damage to a target and then you gain 3 life. And then also it sits in the graveyard. This goes into a lot of Boros decks. But the way that this deck revolves around Phlage is a little bit different than those decks, I think. Mostly being, we're going to be a burn deck. This has actually been a popular deck in Modern in the past, but we are burn with a little bit of life gain splashed in there to get over the finish line against all of these like go wide token based decks. So how are we exactly going to win? Well, if we don't have a good opening hand, rather not a good opening hand, but we want to cycle through our cards, we will have Faithless Looting, Thrill of Possibility, as well as Light Up the Stage to give us that extra card advantage that we're looking for. Now, we're not necessarily getting card advantage off of Faithless Looting, but we are pitching away stuff like lands in the late game when we really need that burn damage to go over the top. Thrill of Possibilities, again, isn't card advantage, but we are throwing away cards to get cards that we do want in our hand. And then Light Up the Stage, whenever we deal damage to our opponent, we can use this the spectacle cost. Sorry, I almost did skewer cost. It's not skewer the critics. We are not running skewer the critics, and I'll tell you why in a second. We are using the spectacle cost to put 2 cards into exile, and then we can cast them till our next turn. Most of the time, we are going to be playing like lands from here, but once in a while, we will get our burn damage through this source, and it can just sit in exile. So even if we don't have the mana on that turn, we can have mana on the next turn to utilize those cards, and we do want to utilize those as much as possible. Now, the reason why we wouldn't be running something like Skewer the Critics is if we don't have that damage in hand, we will have to cast it for the 3 CMC cost. Let me pull it up here real quick. So we will have to pay that 3 CMC if we want to cast this, or we'll be using the spectacle cost. And basically what happens is if you play like a Lightning Helix or if you play a Shock, essentially what you're doing is you're making that damage cost 1 additional extra because we're attacking this on. And really what we want to do is we want to be low to the ground, just bang, bang, boom, right off the stack, trying to get this damage in. So a card like Skewer the Critics wouldn't be useful because we would either be casting it for 3 CMC or we would be tacking on an additional cost to our burn spells already. So what do we have in the 3 CMC slot instead of Skewer the Critics? Well, we have Risk Factor because we want to get that card advantage when we can. And Risk Factor is going to be one of those cards that, you know, they are either going to take the 4 damage or we're going to be drawing the 3 cards. And it fits into our game plan because it has Jumpstart. We can cast this from the graveyard by discarding a card from our hand. So we can discard something like a land card, for instance, if we don't need a land. And then we're saying, hey, opponent, take 4 damage, or we're going to get more cards into our hand. So we can use stuff like Faithless Looting, Thrill of Possibilities to get that additional damage through with Risk Factor. We do have utility pieces like Strike the Rich and Volcanic Spite. So the reason why we would be running something like Strike the Rich is so that we can get our Phlage in hand off a turn earlier, and it also puts a card into the graveyard. We don't want to be running a lot of like board presence cards in this style. We want to just be throwing damage at the opponent's face, which is very similar to Red Deck Wins, just throwing the burn right at their forehead and hoping that we get across the finish line. Those decks do run creatures, but this build does not. It focuses more on putting the cards into the graveyard and then getting your Phlage out as fast as possible. And if they can't remove the Phlage, well, then they're just going to die really quickly. And if they can remove the Phlage, well, we're just going to keep throwing damage at face. So it's either like we have to respond to the Phlage, like our opponent has to respond to the Phlage, or we're just going to die. And if they do respond to the Phlage, well, we're going to punish them by throwing damage at their face and then just recasting Phlage a turn later anyways. So that's how the deck works. We have Prismatic Vista to get those lands out as quickly as possible. You can run more fetch lands in this deck, but I just choose to run 3 Prismatic Vistas. But yeah, I think that's everything that you need to know about the deck. Let's get into some games. Yeah, let's do this. All right. What do we got today? We got someone with the default avatar, and as you know, the first game of the day, we have to guess what deck they are going to be playing just based off their avatar. With the default deck, who knows? I'm just gonna guess control. It's gonna be white-blue control, because that seems like the type of thing that we would run into nowadays. We have 4 lands here and no way of drawing, but we do have the Phlage, Prismatic Vista. We're pretty close to this escape cost. I'm gonna keep this in hopes of drawing some more goodies down the line. Now the question is, do we take damage off the Prismatic Vista? We do have a lot of life gain, and we have life gain in our hand right now. I think we're gonna wait on the Prismatic Vista and we'll just do the Sacred Foundry. We're actually gonna keep this in hand. Our deck is designed to play at instant speed. I did make some modifications before this game, so we do have some things that we need to do. Excuse me, some things we need to do is not a sentence. But we can wait in response is what I'm trying to say until the very end of the turn, and then we can throw something at their face. Okay, so they made tokens off of that. Reading the card explains the card, folks. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna deny some of this these early game plays here. I should have read what their card did, so that I could have just at end step blown up one of these things. It doesn't really do us much use to throw damage at the forehead when they're going to be playing big Eldrazi boys pretty soon here. They've got access to 5 mana. There we go. So now they're going to be making a Scion token every turn. They have access to a lot of mana here. And this is risky for us. So I think what we'll do is we're going to do Prismatic Vista. Now we are going to take some damage here, because we are going to try to get as much as we can off the board here. It's going to be a little futile, and this is why you need to read the cards and why I wish the timer was a little bit longer. That is my one qualm with Magic Arena, is the timer gets in the way of you reading the card, and sometimes there are many important interactions that are happening that we need time to like think about. And that's the one thing about in-person versus Magic Arena. They do need, as the developer of the game, to make a balanced game that fits within the parameters of online play. So in person you can call a judge, online you can't really call a judge. Okay, we got Null Drifter. Okay, and they are casting a colorless spell, so they are going to be drawing this. This card, Ugin's Binding, is really great. I've actually thought about developing a deck that's similar to this. Let's see, so we'll just start by playing a land. Can't play the Phlage yet. I do want to dump cards into the graveyard, but this risk factor I think is important as well. We don't really have a good way of like interacting with their board with this hand, so we're just gonna send some damage at face. Looks like they're gonna allow me. Nope, they're not allowing me to draw any cards. We'll do Strike the Rich just to get another card into the graveyard. I think we will have enough here to cast Phlage if we would like to. But it seems like they're going to play just a big beefy boy, and this game might actually be over. I don't want to be that guy who's like always like, oh, I think the game is going to be over soon. However, I guess we could use the Annihilator trigger. I didn't realize Null Drifter had Annihilator on it. Flying an Annihilator. It's pretty good. This isn't bad because this will beef up our Phlage here. So we got Annihilator 2 coming out with a vengeance. We're gonna get this Phlage out, exiling these 5 cards. I think we are just gonna send the damage at face from this point forward. We will start sacrificing lands to these Annihilator triggers, but my guess is they're just gonna make a huge boy here. Five-color Eldrazi with the Ugin's Labyrinth. Looks like it's a pretty consistent build for them. All right. Oh, are they gonna allow me to? Nope, they're gonna get rid of this. Oh, they're making me return it to my hand. I see. Okay. We will still play it out, but I think this game is pretty much over with the Annihilator 2. Most of the time when you get Annihilator 2 and like you're not playing tokens, that is game for you. We do have Light Up the Stage here. However, we don't have a land play is the problem, and we're not going to be able to get over the finish line with this deck. We will see where they go. We have a land play plus the Strike the Rich. And there is their third Annihilator trigger. And they just keep getting these Ugin's Bindings triggers here. We will review that at the end of this game. But I think this game is sealed and over with. Just seeing as, like, I didn't realize Null Drifter had Annihilator on it, and as a 7, I guess it is a 7 drop. That does make it pretty balanced. Let's see. We will Strike the Rich. Plus Thrill of Possibility pitching the land. Yeah, and that's basically game here. So if they decide to swing in, that will be game. Just want to seal the coffin here. Okay. So that is when it gets exiled. Okay. So game's over. I'm going to just concede because this guy's taking too long, and we'll go into the post game here. So really what we should have done there is we should have read the card at the beginning. And with Modern Horizons 3 being like a new set, it's understandable if like you're not reading every single card. But Ugin's Binding is one of these cards that was giving us a lot of trouble. Whenever return target permanent you don't control to its owner's hand, so that's what you would do if you cast it from your hand. Whenever you cast a colorless spell that's 7 value or greater, you may exile Ugin's Binding from your graveyard. When you do, return each non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand. So it's basically for Eldrazi, it's a board wipe one direction. But they were doing this thing where they were like drawing off of it must have been, yeah, it was off the Null Drifter. Whenever you cast this spell, you draw 2 cards. That's where they were drawing the cards. Eldrazi just have a lot of triggers going on during their turns. So yeah, the real problem was earlier on in the game when we did not realize what Glimpse the Impossible was doing. Again, it's a Modern Horizons 3 card. These cards are going to be in rotation for a while, just because, well, in Historic, they're always going to be in rotation, but in Standard as well, if you're playing Standard, you're going to run into that card a lot. So let's get in game 2. Okay, we're going first. We're on the play with no lands and all spells in our hand. I did put in the proper amount of lands, if you were wondering. Okay, let's see. So we're going first on this play. I like this hand. We can do Faithless Looting on 1 and then Sacred Fire on 2 into a Phlage. Risk factor is definitely like it's a decent pickup here. We could do like pitch the Phlage here. So it's either between Phlage or Risk Factor. I like Risk Factor going face. And then maybe following up with an additional Faithless Looting, just so that we can have card draw in our hands. Yeah, let's do it that way. We'll go here into Faithless Looting, drawing 2 cards, and then we're gonna pitch 1. We don't have the Phlage yet. Strike the Rich is it's okay, but yeah, I think we want to keep risk factor as well as a land play. So we'll go ahead and pitch this, plus we'll pitch the Battlefield Forge. We do have all of the land plays that we need to get to risk factor here. So if they play like an elf here, we can do Sacred Fire. That's the one thing about risk factor is it's not targeting a permanent. So it's targeting the opponent, and the opponent can obviously be like, well, I'm a life gain deck and I'm gonna take 4 damage. That's negligible here. So that's always something that can happen during your games. All right, he's got 1 land open. What are you gonna do, sir? It's such a difficult decision when you have 1 land and so many different options. Okay. Okay. We are just gonna nuke this right off the bat. There's no real thinking about this. We just don't want our opponent to be able to like counter spell. They could have Mana Tithe. They could try to strip a card from our hand. We're just gonna get it out of the way right now. But most of our cards will allow us, except for like Light Up the Stage, they will allow us to play at instant speed. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and grab this land. I think I will do a Light Up the Stage here just so that I have more options next turn. We don't really have a way. This is the thing with Spectacle is we really don't have a way to capitalize on it. Okay, so we're gonna return it to our hand. I see. Kind of played into that Reprieve. Reprieve was in this deck originally, and then I had taken it out because we're not really that style of control where we want to be returning cards to hand. However, it is a good like tech piece to have just in case. What are you gonna do, sir? Holding in the upkeep. Okay, so we can't cast any more spells on this turn. I think in response to this, we will do like a risk factor here. Yep. And this is the reason why it's nice to have instants in this deck, because, you know, in response to shenanigans like this, we can respond to our opponent. And they're on life gain, so it makes sense that they would just take the damage here. Now we have Light Up the Stage, but we can't cast it for its spectacle cost. We also don't have the additional land play here. We have another Ocelot. Fantastic for our opponent, really bad for us. And there's a Phlage, gaining some life off of that. Now we're gonna have to make the difficult decision of do we take out the Ocelot or we take out the Guide of Souls. Ocelot's gonna be gaining them life as well. But I think we are going to take out the Guide of Souls here before it gets buffed. We didn't send damage face, so the spectacle cost did not trigger there for Light Up the Stage. We are behind on board advantage here, and this is the issue with like off meta decks like the ones that I'm brewing right now. Okay. That's right, they have Thoughtseize. So what would you like to take, sir? Would you like to take my Light Up the Stage, or would you like to take my Light Up the Stage? Or perhaps the Thrill of Possibilities is more up your alley here. We really do need to get something for the Ocelot of Pride. We have a lot of spells that just target permanents and don't go face, like the risk factor. It's such a hard decision, my dude. It's so difficult. Do you take my draw spell, or my draw spell? There we go. Thrill of Possibilities getting pitched. Yep, like I said, we need to get rid of this Ocelot. We can survive the Ocelot. Yeah, this is definitely a difficult decision. I think we are gonna play Light Up the Stage. If this last one's a reprieve, that kind of seals the coffin for us. They can't pick, or they can't pluck away these cards from our hand. There's a Lightning Helix. That's also in our deck. We just haven't hit a Lightning Helix yet. City's Blessing. Yeah, definitely need to get rid of that Ocelot. He's gonna cast the Phlage here. And that definitely seals the coffin for us. We just didn't get on this game. We just didn't get the order that we were looking for. Yep, and the Ocelot's gonna make a bunch of tokens. Our land hurts us, so we are going to concede here. So yeah, we just didn't draw in the right order, and they had the reprieve as like a as a spell that they could cast, and then they got ahead on board. We definitely don't want them to be getting ahead on board. So yeah, there's nothing else you can really do except you know, go to another game. Let's go to another game. All right, opponent is on the play first. The only other like turn one plays we have besides like Faithless Looting is like a shock or something. So as long as they're not on like some sort of elf deck here, we should be fine with keeping this hand. As weird as it looks, we should be able to get lands off the top. There is a decent amount of lands in this deck. There's another Sacred Foundry off the top. We will do a Faithless Looting. We're gonna pitch some Phlages. We don't need this many Phlages in hand. So we can go ahead and pitch 2 of them. Now, we are gonna have a lower life total than what they have. Okay, it looks like they are on combo, so we are possibly just Dunzos. That is the theme of my life. We could do a double Faithless Looting here, pitching as much as we can into the graveyard. I think as crazy as it looks, I'm going to do that. We'll pitch this into the graveyard, and we'll pitch a Sacred Flame into the graveyard as well. And we'll do another round here. We're really looking for our 4th land drop. There we go, on our 4th land drop. And then we got to pitch 2 more into the graveyard. So I think we will do the Volcanic Spite and a Thrill of Possibilities here. We don't really need to draw anymore. We've really juiced up our graveyard here. So we're playing out the Phlage, and we're just hoping we can outrun them. But this does look like it's like the Goblin Launcher deck. I can't remember what the name of it is. But we don't need to know the name. All we need to know is they are going to try and reanimate something from the graveyard, or they're gonna play the 7 mana or the 5 mana spell that allows them to cast 1 more card, but that 1 more card is just their win condition that they play. So we don't have any ways. Okay, so they are on Breach the Multiverse. I could potentially breach the multiverse right now. Reanimating. Yep, here we go. 0 interaction, but we're also running very little interaction with this sort of a combo deck. So the only downside to this is we don't have any way to interact with their graveyard, and we're only preying upon creature-based decks here. So we have no way of really interacting with them. So if I did have to do any tweaks to this, it'd be, well, let's get some tweaks that stop them from like interacting with their graveyard or something like that. But we're also interacting with our graveyard, so those things are pretty symmetrical. Is this infinite? Yeah, this might just be infinite here. So I'm just allowing them to do their thing. They've got some creatures in their graveyard here. They're not casting these for the escape cost, so they're gonna head to the graveyard after they're done. I actually haven't seen these decks go off because most of the time on ladder I'm playing some sort of style of deck that stops this thing from happening. So it looks like we're just getting milled out here. And then we're gonna get hit in the face. Just allowing them to go through all of their actions here. They got 16 cards, I got 14 cards. They're probably done breaching the multiverse here, right? Yep, and then that's game. So yeah, there's nothing we could have done there because our deck currently isn't seeking out these particular strategies. Our deck is really like, hey, we want to kill all of these tokens in order to like push forward at the end of the game. So like if you're going up against a lot of elf decks, that's what this deck is really up against. It's not really up against other graveyard strategies. All right, let's see if we can get other graveyard strategies here. Our opponent is going first. Well, I have started to notice this, that we are gonna want to get those shocks in our opening hand, and then we'll want to draw later in the game. So I will be mulliganing this. The Lightning Helix is a good card to have. The Thrills of Possibilities, not really the greatest, but we will keep this hand. We're gonna pitch this back. And I think we'll be a little bit more on the back foot here. We typically are on the back foot when it comes to our deck. Go ahead and play a Sacred Foundry tapped. If we can wait a turn, what we will do is we will Lightning Helix plus the light up the stage here. I think they thought I was a different style of deck. So that is one of the advantages to playing this deck, is most people just think you're on Ocelot. Did I have fun? We didn't really play a game, so no. I didn't have fun. But I'm guessing they just thought he's playing Ocelots, and I'm gonna just immediately concede because my hand is not like allowed for that. So you can just scam some wins. All right, we're going up against this Johnny. Johnny, my boy. Our opponent is going first, but we do have to strike the riches here. I'm gonna keep this hand just because whatever they play first, we can do strike the rich as our turn one play, and then if they start vomiting out cards, we can Lightning Helix whichever one suits our needs here. Looks like they might be on control here. Ooh, okay. Okay, I see you with your artifacts and whatnot. Our opponent just didn't get what they needed. They just didn't get what they needed. Again, could have been, hey, I see they're on mono red, it's a burn deck, they're gonna go face in the next turn, or they're on combo and they're gonna beat me. So again, sometimes the color combo just gets people spooked and they just leave the game. We have no idea of knowing that, but that's 2 games in a row we won just based off of our colors. It's important to note that you should just play out your games, even if you think you're not going to win, because sometimes the opponent just doesn't have good cards in hand. Like, if they're not presenting a threat on your board, just keep playing. You don't need to just play land, concede. So... it also could be that it's like, hey, I gotta get going. I got something else in my life to do. That's totally possible as well. All right, our opponent is going first, and they do have Yorin, so I think they are gonna be some sort of control deck. However, we just don't care. We are just gonna go face, and that is gonna be enough for us. We'll do Strike the Rich so we have some mana available to us. We can do Shock, light up the stage here. Okay, so they are gonna give us an opening, which is very gracious of them to give us an opening. They have no mana available to them. So I think we will do a, we'll do Shock into light up the stage here. Because we do wanna save our token. Our treasure token for later. So now we can play the Shock out of exile if we'd like. And we're just going to be going face for the foreseeable future here. Because they're probably on a control build. There's a Yorin. Don't know why they would be sending this to hand. Okay. Go shock into another light up the stage. We could have actually played the shock from exile, I just realized. There's a land play. We don't have a lot of cards in hand for this Faithless Looting, so we might just send it to exile. Let's do shock. Actually, what we will do is we will play the Faithless Looting just to cycle more cards into our graveyard. We will be on 4 mana in the following turn here. We don't really need Strike the Rich and the Volcanic Spite. I don't think we will need that necessarily, so we'll send that back. Now there is a heavy amount of draw in this deck, and it should just be replaced with burn. So that is something to consider, is just replacing all of your burn options with, or sorry, not your burn options, replacing some of your draw cards with your burn options. That's what I was going for. Do mountain here. Prismatic Vista can go to the bin, as well as the Volcanic Spike. Spike. I'm gonna keep mispronouncing those words until the end of time. Faithless Looting again. Ooh, 2 Phlages, nice. Okay, we will send those both to the graveyard, and then we'll keep up a Lightning Helix here. Now that we have 4 lands available, they're gonna be in a spot here where they've got to choose between, am I going to counter the Lightning Helix, or am I going to, okay. They've got a Teferi here. Once they cast this, I can't actually interact with it, so I am going to send a Lightning Helix up top. I can't interact with my opponent's turn.
Let's slow this down.
That should be fine. He's gonna uptick the Teferi here.
Oh, I've done the hero.
Be able to draw a card. We will play a Phlage from the graveyard. It's a good thing we dumped a lot of cards into the graveyard with Faithless Looting here. So we will go ahead and exile a few of these cards. Just being aware that we do want to have some options with Faithless Looting in the graveyard.
This is hardly my work.
I thought he upticked that. Looks like he down-ticked to draw a card. That put him in range of the Phlage, which is good for us. We've got plenty of cards in the graveyard here. Yep. Go ahead and destroy it. We're gonna cast another Phlage here. We got a Faithless Looting in hand. And plenty of Faithless Lootings in the graveyard. Exile one of them. We can exile another Phlage here. We'll choose to just send it upstairs. I do want to do Mountain Faithless Looting, I believe, just to keep a healthy amount of cards in exile. Or not exile, but in our graveyard. Light up the stage. I think just putting cards into our hand is going to be important. Or putting cards into exile that we can cast later. Even though Lightning Helix does go face, we are threatening lethal here, so he's got to get rid of our Phlage. Okay, well, that's one way to get rid of Phlage. He's going to exile it with the Planeswalker here.
How hard could it be?
And this does put it in range of casting another Phlage here. Five. Their Planeswalker isn't really useful for deleting this off the board, so part of me does want to go face just to keep the pressure on. But we will go ahead and do that and send it to the Planeswalker, just so that he doesn't have an option. Because Planeswalkers are annoying. Like, if he gets rid of my Phlage, that's kind of it. We're kind of gassed out at this point. So we want to be able to have some options going up here. We got Boros. Yep.
Once again.
Just kind of getting outperformed here. It gets destroyed and sent to the graveyard, which is good. But we do have this issue of not having enough cards to actually cast the Phlage. And even if we did like risk factor here and like get them to draw cards, we could potentially trick them and get them in range here. Like if they take the 4 damage, then we have light up the stage as the backup. They are just going to let us draw cards here. We get a lot of options actually. So we can go face. I think we do go face, and we just go for that. We have light up the stage. Okay, so this can go at the Planeswalker. We can pitch a land from our hand because we can put a card on the bottom of our library. If we do, we draw a card. They are very close to being in range. Okay, and that just ends the game for us. Most of the time, this just ends the game for us. Exile a permanent or a card from hand. We'll go ahead and do this. We can't target them. We can target their Planeswalkers and stuff. But we have to send Phlage to Boros in this scenario. Thrill of Possibilities. So we do want to cast a Phlage here. So we have 4, 5, 6 mana available to us. We can do 7 mana and use Thrill of Possibilities to pitch one, which will be the Strike the Rich. I think that's what we'll do here. Strike the Rich. We'll get 2 more cards to our hand. Okay, we get a Sacred Flame, but we do want to get the Phlage out onto the field here. I think that is fine. Yeah, we can exile those 5. Submit. Now, if they have a counterspell here, that is a feels bad. They do have a counterspell, and it's an absorb on top of that. They just might be in control of the game from this point forward. We did get really close. Yep, this is kind of just another nail in the coffin here.
Here goes nothing.
Okay, where are we at with cards in the graveyard? We need more cards in the graveyard. We can do a Faithless Looting to pitch 2 cards, and then that's enough to cast the Phlage. So we'll pitch this and this to the graveyard. That was not enough. I did not count my mana well here. We'll go ahead and target Teferi.
Time for plan B.
And they're just waiting to counter this spell, I believe. This is the spell that actually matters to counter. It's the Phlage. Get rid of the Nicol Bolas, but we have nothing left. We literally have 0 cards in the graveyard. They've outpaced us. Yep, and that's pretty much game here. So we're gonna go ahead and leave this game because they've won the game. We really don't have any more options. We drew as many cards as we possibly can. So let's go over to what I would do differently with this deck going forward. So with a deck called Phlage Control, you would think that you'd be able to control the whole game in like multiple aspects, but red, white, those 2 color combinations aren't really set up to counter spells effectively, just blanket counter spells effectively. Most of the time you're sending cards back to hand, or it's like a mana tithe situation where they're just paying one additional extra. And most of the time they can pay that one additional extra. So what is it that the deck actually controls? Well, the deck actually controls just creature-based decks. So you want to focus more on eliminating the creatures, and like I was doing against the Teferi control, the Nicol Bolas style deck at the end there, I was trying to just like tick down their health, which wasn't allowing me to go face with everything. I was trying to eliminate those planeswalkers. So most of the time you want to just be sending the damage face, but you can control the board by eliminating creatures with Shock, with Lightning Helix, with Sacred Fire. What I would do is I would probably eliminate cards like this Volcanic Spite and just have a spell that goes face. There are plenty of options. Let me grab a few here. So Play with Fire is an option for you if you want to just send the damage at their face. You get that nice scry effect. It's very similar to Shock. In fact, you could probably just swap Play with Fire out with Shock, and it would just be a strict upgrade to your deck. Another card would be like Electrostatic Blast. It goes 2 damage to any target, and then we are going to exile cards off the top of our library, and then you can play those cards that turn. So you're going to be shocking something on the board, and then the next spell you would cast, you get this effect, and then you can play those cards as well. So it kind of doubles as like a risk factor-esque effect. So if you want to take out the risk factors and put these in instead, I would recommend doing that. In fact, since they're the same rarity, if you don't have risk factor already and you have Electrostatic Blast, I would just do this instead since it's a cheaper mana spell. And another card that I was thinking about putting in this deck was also Lightning Strike, just because it does 3 damage to any target. It fits that criteria of hitting anything on the board as long as it doesn't have hexproof on it. You can send the Lightning Strike their direction. So those are the couple of cards that I would add to this deck. Now the cards that I would take out in replacement would be something like Risk Factor, because they can choose to take the damage. They're always going to choose the option that better suits what their game plan is. So if they're a control style deck and they're gaining a bunch of life, they're probably just going to take the 4 damage because they don't want to give you card advantage. Really what a Risk Factor is good at is it's good at when they can't pay the 4 life and they will die if they do, then you draw the 3 additional cards and you gain that card advantage. However, with burn decks, you're trying to just get across the finish line. So this was a little bit of a building challenge for me, but let me know what you think in the comments below. What you would add, what you would remove from this deck. Maybe you have a whole different style of how to approach this, but I thank you for watching this, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.